Israelite guilt of innocent blood. Israelite guilt of innocent blood. Our scripture is from Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 1 through 9. Our keynote verses are Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 8, verses 9 and 10. Reads as thus: Be merciful, O Yahweh, unto thy people Israel, whom thou hast redeemed, and lay not innocent blood upon thy people of Israel's charge, and the blood shall be forgiven them. So shalt thou put away the guilt of innocent blood from among you, when thou shalt do that which is right in the sight of Yahweh. The Israelites have a very violent and bloody history among themselves, so much so that the prophet Isaiah reports what Yah tells Israel in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 15. And when you spread forth your hand, I will hide mine eyes from you. Yes, when you make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Wash you, make you clean, put away the evil of your doings from before mine eyes. Cease to do evil. Tonight's lesson in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 1 through 9 is a lesson that is dealing contemporarily with the high rate of unsolved murders in Israelite communities today. This word is speaking to Israelites today. Yah is looking at the high rate of the shedding of innocent blood and unsolved murders in the Black community, which is committed by Blacks on Blacks who are the real Hebrew people. Already, statistically, it has been shown that well over half or more of murders committed in our communities go unsolved. We have a higher rate of unsolved crime, of murder, bloodshed, than any other nationality or ethnic group in America. According to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 15, Yah is saying the Hebrews of the so-called Black community are guilty. We are guilty as a community of being places of the shedding of much innocent blood. And thereby, he says, our hands as a community are full of blood, which means though you and I can individually call upon him and he forgives us and cleanses, but yet when Israelites come together without a resolution concerning all of the bloodshed in our community, Yah says he will not hear the prayers of Israel collectively till that's dealt with. Which means then that I've seen friends here in Chicago and various other places across the country where we'll have people get together and pray over places where there's been tragedy in our communities, such as was the case there in Memphis the other day with that young man that was killed. However, due to the fact that many of the legal justice coordinators in our urban areas are people from our own community, very often. Like in Philadelphia, or Chicago, or Atlanta, very often, those who process crimes are in those major Black communities are very often very lax and do not fully implement justice. And it's as though somehow, some way, Hashatan has bought them out before they win elections as attorneys, prosecuting attorneys. There's a satanic organization called, it's called the New Generation. It's a organization that's run by a nefarious, notorious man whose name is so hard for people to say because he's bankrolled so many politicians, they're afraid to call him out for what he's doing. His name is George Soros. He don't have any money on me. And this man who's with his program called Open Society, they look to pay off many of our prosecuting judges and attorneys of our community, not from the other people's community, but from the Hebrew community or Black community that cannot bring peace in our communities because they refuse to prosecute those that commit bloody crimes. I was looking at a video of a crime shootout the other day between two gangs on the west side. And they were shooting, and it was caught on camera. The police were there. They were even, some of them, it appeared, was shooting at the police. The district attorney, whose name is Kim Fox, here in Chicago, is a sister that just lives down the street from me. She said there wasn't enough evidence that she could prosecute. And these are people that are murderers in our own community. Yes, they're Black, but they're murderers not of people in the other man's community. They're murderers of people in your own community. Then our district prosecutors from our community, bought off by George Soros' Open Society money, which says to them, we'll bankroll you to win your elections to be a judge or to be a prosecutor if you do not do what needs to be done, in so many words, for the incarceration of those who need to be incarcerated and dealt with by justice. And we have a mayor in Chicago who caters to that same money. There's a district attorney in Philadelphia, a brother, bought off and paid out by the Open Society of George Soros. They say they want to close the jails. They want to close the prisons. They want to defund the police. What's going on here? All that happens whenever these people get in and they look like you and me, the death tolls go up in our community. Whether it's in Atlanta or Houston, very often the people that regulate the management of justice are our own people that have been bought out and sold out. We've got a judge here that just refuses, a brother from our community, to do what needs to be done. They let criminals back out who are bent on doing more. And by the time they get them back in, they've probably killed more people and maimed others before they get back out and still can get out. Now, mind you, we have been victimized by an unfair, unjust criminal justice system that forced injustice on us by coerced confessions. I know about that. Yet, in our text tonight, Yah says, if you don't know how to deal with those who shed blood in your community, I won't listen to your prayers. And Yah's not a Democrat and Yah's not a Republican. If there's somebody shedding blood in your community, even if they look like you, and your leaders don't know how to deal with that, God says, I'm not listening to the prayers of your community. I'm going to just let it run wild. And so our lesson tonight in Deuteronomy 21, chapter 21, verse 1 and 9 is dealing with the tragedy of black on black killing among the Hebrew Israelite people that goes unpunished. And the need and process in the Torah for Israelites to seek Yah's forgiveness on our black community for the continual shedding of innocent blood in our neighborhoods, which are now hoods because neighbors don't know each other now. So we just have hoods. We don't have neighbors. We just have hoods. We don't have neighborhoods. But Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 1 through 9 teaches regarding the atonement process for unsolved murders. It states, verse 1 through 9, if one be found in the land which Yah Elohim giveth thee to possess it, lying in the field, and be not known who have slain him, then thy elders and thy judges shall come forth, and they shall measure unto the cities which are round about him that is slain. And it shall be that the city which is next unto the slain man, even the elders of that city shall take an heifer which have not been wrought with, and which have not drawn in the yoke. And the elders of that city shall bring down the heifer unto a rough valley, which is neither eared nor sown, and shall strike off the heifer's head there in the valley. And the priest and the sons of Levi shall come near. For them Yahweh thy Elohim have chosen to minister unto him and to bless in the name of Yahweh. And by their word shall every controversy and every stroke be tried. And all the elders of that city that are next unto the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer that is beheaded in the valley. And they shall answer and say, our hands have not shed this blood, neither have our eyes seen it. Be merciful, O Yahweh, unto thy people Israel, whom thou hast redeemed, and lay not innocent blood unto thy people of Israel's charge, and the blood shall be forgiven them. So shalt thou put away the guilt of innocent blood from among you, when thou shalt do that which is right in the sight of Yahweh. As we survey these first 9 verses in Deuteronomy 21 regarding the resolving of this bloody, murderous trend in our neighborhoods, it is glaringly apparent that this whole process of resolving the blood guilt of our people before Yah involves a component that is very often missing in our hoods. And that is a community elders council of responsible men. Notice in verses 1 and 2, it states, if one be found in the land which Yah Elohim giveth thee to possess it, laying in the field, and it be not known who have slain him, then thy elders and thy judges shall come forth, and they shall measure unto the cities which are round about that is slain. Yes, yes. Even now we have judges from our neighborhood, particularly in majority black cities, or significant numbers of us. We have a lot of judges, but they're not actively engaged. They've been bought out and sold out to George Soros money. They've been bought out and sold out to forces that want to bring chaos and confusion in our neighborhoods so that it can fulfill that demonic saying of the New World Order people, ordo ab chaos. Out of chaos order. That is, they want to provoke the chaos in our community so they can implement their martial law, New World Order. And so it's a trick. Notice in verses 1 and 2 that when unsolved murders take place, men who are elders and judges in that area were to participate in a process of determining the boundaries of the city or the neighborhood area that's closest to where the dead body was found. The elders and judges were responsible men of the community. These days, responsible men have moved out of our most dangerous neighborhood. And the ability to implement mature guidance in the community to resolve this problem of the blood guilt of unsolved murders, it is very limited at best. We cannot depend on the social welfare justice system. Here in Chicago, we have an Illinois forum comprised of people that live way out in the north side suburbs, millionaires, and we don't know anything about our community, yet they the ones, by their influence on our people in the state legislature, people in the state house of the governor's staff, and that are judicial people. There's Judge Sanders here that are bought out and sold out to not do what it takes to keep their own neighborhood safe. And so we are suffering a loss of responsible people. They are under the money of those outside our community, groups, and y'all, some Israelites might get mad at me calling them out. Groups like Black Lives Matter is really not about you. It's about another agenda. They're just using you as a springboard for another agenda, a gay, lesbian agenda, and a communist agenda. And I'm not saying this because I listened to this from Tucker Carlson or Fox Network. I'm saying this because I've seen it. I've seen how the money works in the criminal justice system because I worked in the criminal justice system in Chicago. And I've seen it. And I've seen the chaos. And I see the people and the politicians that are reminiscent of politicians all across our communities, across this nation, that are people, men and women from our communities, that are being used as fronts to seem to be those that are working in our favor, when in reality they're willing to be played to the disadvantage of their own people. We got to call this out, Israel. We got to call this out. We got to awaken that sleeping giant of our people to realize they've been played and are being played, and we are suffering. Black Lives Matter, their agenda is not Black lives. I'm here to tell you it's not. They have another agenda. They're just using us as a springboard for their homosexual, gay, lesbian, and communist agenda and New World Order of George Soros, who bankrolls them. George Soros is a Hungarian man, billionaire. They know we're a poor community. They know they can buy out some of our people. They got some education to let them have their 5 minutes of fame and prestige on the network that he and others of his ilk own, like Fox or MSNBC or CNN. And once our people get on that, like the sellouts are Al Sharpton, once they get on there, their agenda is not what Yah's agenda is for us. We got to call these people out. They got to know they can't keep using us as fodder for their own aggrandizement and for the plans of Satan to destroy us as a people. We got to call this out. It says here, this loss of responsible intervention in the Hebrew community, it was prophesied by the prophet Isaiah in chapter 3, verse 1 through 3. that we're going through right now, particularly the loss of responsible male intervention in the Hebrew community. In Isaiah chapter 3, verse 1 through 3, for behold, Yahweh, Yahweh of hosts, that take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stay and the staff, the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water, the mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet and the prudent and the ancient, the captain of 50 and the honorable man and the counselor and the cunning artificer and the eloquent orator. Yah is saying that he has taken away the responsible leadership in the community of Hebrew Israelites. Yes, most of our elected officials that represent our community cannot stand for the truth and righteousness of Yah's justice in our community. They make too much. They gain too much to play along with the game that's bringing our people down. It's time we raise up. It's time that we rise up. Also, according to another passage in Deuteronomy, if you would go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 54, it says, particularly of the Hebrew man. The Hebrew man. A lot of this is our fault. A lot of this is we as men have not stood up as the guardians of our own community. We're the only group of men of any other nationality of men who look to other people to raise our children. It says here, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, Isaiah 28, verse 54, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall lead. Now, due to the hostility of Hebrew men to each other, who view each other with what is called an evil eye or a suspicious eye of antagonism. We are, with that evil eye towards each other, we are not able to work together to improve our community. Not only is this problem rampant in our Hebrew community, but many of our men in the hood are not taking care of their families as they should. For it says, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall lead. So we have a high rate of deadbeat dads who leave their women and their children alone so that our children grow up without the father present. So in this vacuum of elders and responsible men who can stand in the gap for resolving the community problems, such as the atonement process for unsolved murders, Isaiah says, chapter 3, verse 4 through 5, that when men are not standing up for resolving the community problems, and we entrust the social welfare system to do it, we entrust a weak criminal justice system that's bought out and sold out and is a criminal justice injustice system, not to protect us, but to fatten the pockets of those to whom get paid to fake it, that they really are doing something for making their community safe. There was a great judge I knew here in Chicago. He was the first Black man to be elected to the Illinois Supreme Court. Judge Pension. Some of you may have heard of Judge Pension. And I had the opportunity to work around Judge Pension when I was working at Cook County Jail back in the 90s, just before he stepped down. Judge Pension was a man that had a way of saying things the way they really are. And I was in his courtroom one day at the Cook County Courthouse at 26th California. I used to have him come and talk to our men and even talk to the women. And sometimes he and Mr. Johnson, the owner of Ebony and Jet, they would come in together. You remember Mr. Johnson, the one that had Ebony and Jet? That was his company. They would come in with a program called Black on Black Love. Okay, Judge Pension, one day there was a person I was working with in the jail that had done a heinous crime, but they wanted to repent. And he asked me to come and stand in the court with him before Judge Pension. All right, now, Judge Pension had a way of saying things about the way this criminal injustice system works. He said, young man, to the brother that was standing before him, young man, you ever heard the saying, crime doesn't pay? And the young man said, yes, sir. And Judge Pension said, if you heard that, that's the biggest lie you would have ever heard. Because right now, as you standing here, being prosecuted, there's a lot of people getting paid. I'm getting paid to adjudicate you. That clerk over there writing down the information about your case, she getting paid. These bailiffs right here that are guarding you and handcuffed you to come in before me, they getting paid. These lawyers, they really getting paid. All right? So yes, crime does pay, but it's not paying you. It's paying others who don't know what to do with you. And that was a very eye-opening moment, but it's the case where Yah says when Israelites in Deuteronomy 21, when we have to resolve crime in our community, we must have a social justice system. Judges are mentioned that know how to deal with judges. As much as I know you all may not like Judge Brown, I believe his name is. He's running for mayor of Memphis right now. That man knows the reality of what we're talking about tonight. He just doesn't understand the aspect of it from the biblical, or at least he's not admitting he does. Maybe he does. All right, but these are measures Yah put in place to keep our communities in order here in Deuteronomy 21. And when we do not have a responsible group of elders and men in the community, where they've left the community, this is what happened. In Isaiah chapter 3, verse 4 through 5, it says, this is what happened. He says, and I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. Do you know, before I left the criminal justice system working with juvenile, the ACLU, the so-called American Civil Liberties Union, had done a federal class action lawsuit against the criminal justice system in Chicago. And they made it where there was a settlement. A settlement was made between the state and the ACLU. Now, the ACLU, a lot of our people think they're ones fighting for our rights. No, they're not. They're not standing for our rights. They have another agenda, just like Black Lives Matter. They're not your friend. They had it, and they came in, and they made the facility where I work a ball of confusion, where you couldn't tell the boys what they can't do. That no is a bad word. You have to finesse them without saying no. Or you could be written up if you are a staff. And the boys are not fools. They could realize they could get away with mayhem and craziness, not have to listen to anybody. And if that wasn't bad enough, no more than when that had happened back in 2015, when these boys got out in the street. when they went back to their hoods in Inglewood, Lawndale, Roseland, and the neighborhoods where our people are. When they got back, they had no respect for the police. Yes. They got away, they could get away with the police because police want to keep that job. So if a policeman has to grab them while they trying to hurt somebody, then Black Lives Matter pops up and says, oh, you doing wrong to our community. But these people are not doing that for our community. They're doing it for their own agenda to get publicity. That's how the game's being played. And our young people, our young men and young women end up wrecking and destroying their lives. And then it says, and wrecking their community. Crime is up and it's continued escalating because the means of the checks and balances for the inclinations of our youth have been withdrawn by people that aren't even in our community. You see, and so now what Isaiah says, you'll see what happens when that is done. In Isaiah chapter 3, it states, and I will give children to be their princes. I will give children to be their rulers. That is, if a parent wants to discipline their son or their daughter for what and how they really do need to be disciplined, that son and daughter know they can call the welfare system, here it's called DCFS, and say they're being abused. Instead of the child being disciplined, the parents are disciplined for disciplining their child. And so the children now, teenagers, rule. And babies. And it says in verse 5, chapter 3 of Isaiah, and the people shall be oppressed, everyone by another, and everyone by his neighbor. The child shall besave himself proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable. Isaiah 3 describes, as a result of the absence of elders, the community becomes unsafe. Youth become a negative, dominant influence in the community, filling it with crime and violence and street gangs. According as Isaiah prophesied in Isaiah 51:20, it says, thy sons have fainted. They lie at the head of all the streets as a wild bull in a net. They are full of the fury of Yahweh, the rebuke of thy Elohim. That is, thy sons have relapsed and they hang out at the head of the street corner as a wild bull in a net. They are full of fury. And they won't have no problem cussing out anybody, whether young or old. Most of the high murder rate and unsolved murders is from our young people in our communities, as Yah had said by his servants, the prophets. And this occurs when elders and fathers are not sufficiently present in the community to raise their children. As Moshe said in Deuteronomy 28, verse 54, that their eye would be evil toward their children, whom they shall leave or forsake, which Isaiah chapter 3, verse 4 or 5 says, results in these children becoming violent oppressors of their community, which results in the community being defiled before Yah with the innocent blood of unsolved murders. Numbers chapter 35, verse 33 says, so you shall not pollute the land wherein you are, for blood defileth the land. And the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So if they're not being prosecuted and these crimes are unsolved, the Black communities, the hoods are defiled before Yah. He keeps a register of these things. Think of all of the innocent bystanders, babies, little children, old people, sitting in their houses that are being shot and killed. So, according to Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 3 through 5, Yah gives the responsible men of the elders of the Council of Israel the duty of setting the atonement process in motion for the cleansing of the community area from the defilement of the bloodshed of the unsolved murder cases. Verse 3 says, and 4, and it shall be, this is verse 3 and 4 in chapter 21 of Deuteronomy, for those of you still reading along with us in your scriptures, we're back there. All right. And it says, verse 3 and 4, and it shall be that the city which is next unto the slain man, even the elders of that city shall take an heifer with which have not been wrought with, which have not drawn in the yoke. And the elders of that city shall bring down the heifer unto a rough valley, which is neither eared nor sown, and shall strike off the heifer's neck there in the valley. Now, the job of the elders was to choose the atonement animal sacrifice that Yah instructs them to use, which will cleanse the community area from the defilement of the blood of the innocent. In this case, the sacrifice was that of a female cow. Now, a female cow is a gentle and unassuming, non-violent creature, which represents innocence. This creature is also a beast of burden for agricultural usage, but has not yet been used. And it represents the sacrifice of a young, harmless creature because it hasn't been used, so it's still young. Also, this creature is used to atone for the shedding of innocent blood in the community area, that it must be killed in a rough and undeveloped area in a valley. Because our Hebrew community have become rough and undeveloped areas. I remember in Inglewood, which they call Chirac, which is one of the bloodiest areas in the world, because more deaths take place there than actually when the war in Iraq was going on, as quiet as it's kept. All right, now, I remember that there was community activists who raised money and they built up these old shuttered storefronts and put in Starbucks and these new kinds of shops and stores and put a Whole Foods store there. And I drove through, I said, wow, community's really been redeveloped. No more than I said that a few months later, because of riots due to the murder of the brother in Minneapolis, all of that was torn down and crime went way up. And it's all desolate. But see, they can build new buildings, but if they don't stop the shedding of blood, Yah causes these neighborhoods to deteriorate. The blood curse is there. Just like when Cain killed his brother, one of the things that happened to him was there was nothing he could grow to the ground anymore. He could no longer be a farmer, an agriculturalist. Nothing would grow for him. With us, we keep trying to rebuild neighborhoods with the same blood shed problems. And all that happens is the bloodshed doesn't stop. And eventually all that new infrastructure decays. Now Whole Foods shut it up and left. Starbucks shut it up and left. I mean, I've seen this little game going back and forth in our urban areas in Atlanta, in Houston, New Orleans. Jackson, Charleston. It's that same process. We're still not resolving the problem. And so the atonement ceremony described here in Deuteronomy was to be done in a rough and undeveloped valley to illustrate this point that places of the shedding of innocent blood become deteriorating places of no development, and the infrastructure falls apart with no opportunities for progress. This describes the hoods. We can all see this in real time right now. So it says in verse 4 of chapter 21 Deuteronomy, and the elders of that city shall bring down the heifer into a rough valley, which is neither eared nor sown, and shall strike off the heifer's neck there in the valley, because this valley represents our community, where a lot of bloodshed is. They have become run down, broke down communities. Even some remember there was a time in Chicago on the South Side, you still had families, two-parent households. You have places like that. You have places like in New York, Harlem. They were like industrious places of pride for our people. But then our morals failed, our infrastructure in our families failed. And now these places just run down, broke down places. Even in my hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, it grieves me. I go there to reminisce where I grew up. I grew up in the neighborhood where Muhammad Ali grew up. And in our time, we had a nice neighborhood. We had a Black community. We had like our own Black Wall Street. All of that's gone now. And all we have are people too poor to move out of those neighborhoods. And they're scavenging each other with crime and bloodshed. So as you can see, this prophecy of the sacrifice in a rough, tough valley is an illustration of a prophecy of the rough, tough valley of despair in our communities right now. So according to verse 5, the Levite priests were to be present as representatives from Yah to validate this atonement ceremony. They were to be there as effective witnesses from Yah, that those involved in the ceremony had nothing to do with the murder. Now, I remember, my father, he was a gangster. Yeah, I have to admit it. My father was a gangster that worked for Bumpy Johnson in New York City. And later you all know the story of Frank Lucas, an American gangster. You know what I always remember about Frank Lucas and them, and I think some of these movies like New Jack City tried to emulate what Frank Lucas and them would do. After all of the destruction they caused through that blue magic heroin, yet every Thanksgiving they were giving out turkeys to everybody. Like they were community development people. And for young people growing up in the streets, they'd see people like Bumpy or them. They thought these were heroes. Yet these are people that turned down your neighborhood. See, the Levites had to be there so that no people like that could be involved in the community development when they the ones tearing down the community. Some people try to get gang chiefs. Oh, we got to have a gang chief referendum. I've seen that little game played too. First of all, they tried that here. And they had one of the old chiefs. There was a lieutenant for one of the biggest gangs. Now, this man's about the same age as I am. He's in his late 60s, almost 70. These young men out on the streets don't know him, and he doesn't have any food. So why do these liberal organizations keep trying to pull up guys like that to come in to resolve the crisis with the young people? When some of these guys, like this man I'm talking about, they still on the take. They still feel like they got juice to sick others against each other. Why are you gonna get him to build up the community that he's tearing down. That's why the Levites, they were present because they had to be the ones as referees to say, oh no, this person can't be involved in this ceremony. He's done this, he's doing that. I mean, granted, all have sinned and come short of the glory. Yeah, but you know, when I hear somebody say, okay, oh yeah, that man that killed those little children by accident and got locked up. Well, you know, I had to tell the boys to go ahead and beat him up. Now, first of all, yeah, I'm sure we all felt good that the person that accidentally shot recklessly some young people get beat up. I know I would, but the reality is this guy is still saying, who supposedly is out of that, and he's about 70, that he can still call up people to beat up people. That right there is a telltale sign. He don't need to be in the community development area. Because if he still got that kind of juice, then that means he's still involved some kind of way. I know another man that was on death row for many years and got off death row, Jesse Jackson and Farrakhan's lawyer, dear friend of mine, a great lawyer, great friend of mine, helped me with my young men a lot. He became a mentor for this brother. He came in, defeated his case, got the brother off death row, and that brother was the leader of he was the leader of the vice lords here in Chicago, one of the biggest, most notorious gangs. But this brother, once he got out of that world, he stayed out. And I worked with him a long time, for many years. He never went back. He never sent off somebody else. Even if it was sending off somebody to do a good thing, like beating up somebody that did something bad, he never did that. His life had changed. Now, somebody like that could be under elders' council. But if they still engaged with the Levites, could look at them and say, no, he's not qualified. He's still caught up in a sly way, being an old gangster. And, you know, the sad thing, a lot of these old gangsters, they better be careful. These young boys might shoot them if they try to come and pull rank on them. So they need to just give up on that. But still, we see these little groups that come from outside our hood will pull these people up as people that still do things to make the community better. See how crooked and wicked this system is? And what I'm saying about Chicago, it's all over the country like that. I've seen it in other cities like Philly and others. I mean, Philly and Chicago running neck and neck for the murder capital in terms of just actual numbers. Now, there's some places like Jackson and Atlanta that per capita may have a higher per capita, or St. Louis, but it's the same game everywhere. So the Levites were to make sure that none of those people that are halfway in, halfway out can be in a position to fake it, that they trying to improve the community. When all they are opportunists looking for another opportunity to make another buck. Even if they have to make another buck the clean way, they still are manipulators. So once that's resolved, that these are legitimate elders. In verse 6 and 8, the elders of the community where the dead body was found, they were to wash their hands over the slain heifer cow while confessing they had nothing to do with the murder of the slain. Verse 6, 7, and 8 say, and all the elders of that city that are next unto the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer that is beheaded in the valley. And they shall answer and say, our hands have not shed this blood, neither have our eyes seen it. Be merciful, O Yahweh, unto thy people Israel, whom thou hast redeemed, and lay not innocent blood unto thy people of Israel's charge, and the blood shall be forgiven them. The washing of the hands by the elders over the sacrifice was to illustrate their lack of guilt in the murder of the victim that they found laying dead. And as such, this is an unresolved murder case. So they would wash their hands saying, I am washed from being guilty of anything with this murder. And they would wash their hands over the sacrificial animal. The Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, evidently knew of this Hebrew hand washing ceremony in Deuteronomy 21, verse 1 through 9, when it says in Matthew 27, verse 4, regarding his personal preference, his own personal preference to not kill Yeshua, because he knew Yeshua was innocent. Just as the sacrifice cow in Deuteronomy 21, 3, 4 illustrated the innocence of the innocent victim, Yeshua, when he was sentenced to death. So though Pilate washed his hands from the execution of Yeshua, he nonetheless was complicit in sending Yeshua to death. Matthew 27, verse 24 says, when Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it. So even though he's guilty, Pilate's guilty, because he still gave the sentence, but yet he says, in terms of his own personal preference, he would not have sent Yeshua to death. And washed his hands, and my hands are washed of it, like he's these elders that we just read about in Deuteronomy 21. However, the Israelite elders of that time, of Pilate in the 1st century AD, they, unlike the elder ceremony in Deuteronomy 21, verse 7 through 8, which says, our hands have not shed this blood, neither have our eyes seen it. Be merciful, O Yah, unto thy people Israel, whom thou hast redeemed, and lay not innocent blood unto thy people of Israel's charge. But the elders of Israel in Yeshua's trial said just the opposite. They said in Matthew 27, 4, then answered all the people and said, his blood be on us and on our children. Matthew 27, verse 24. These are Israelite elders saying that over Yeshua, that they're saying his blood be on us. Whereas in the law of blood shed in Deuteronomy 21 is where the elders say, we're not part of the blood of this person that died. But these elders, they show you how far off Israel had become in the time of Yeshua. And see, what they did was their tragic pronouncement meant that Yeshua's blood be on them. They also said, and on our children. Now, this tragic pronouncement of our ancestors not only put innocent blood guilt on them for the murder of Yeshua, but it also put it upon us, their children. What has since happened? What has since happened? Unlike Deuteronomy 21, verse 89, where elders beg Yah's mercy and are thereby found innocent before Yah for the shedding of blood. When they pray, be merciful, O Yah, unto thy people Israel, whom thou hast redeemed, and lay not innocent blood unto thy people of Israel's charge, and the blood shall be forgiven them. So thou shalt put away the guilt of innocent blood from among you, when thou shalt do that which is right in the sight of Yah. But our forefathers in the 1st century declared just the opposite. And so, as a result of what they did, they not only put it on themselves, the blood, they put the blood guilt of the death of Yeshua on us, their children, many generations later. Is there any wonder? Is there any kind of significance to that, considering that we are a violent community of people with countless blood shed among us? that we seem to still be under this pronouncement that they say, that it has been for many generations since that time. Yet we still are a community of bloodshed, of innocent, unsolved murders to this day. Our neighborhoods are mostly communities of death and murder, of innocent blood by crime and by abortion. We are killing more of our own innocent children than any other people. As a result, Yeshua forewarned us, because in his time of their complicity and approval of his bloodshed, Yeshua forewarned of this grievous sin and the dreadful consequences for the blood of the innocent on the Hebrew community from this time to this day, even in this latter time of you, their children. Yeshua says in Matthew 23, verse 34, wherefore I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them you shall kill and crucify, and some of them you shall scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed from the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias of Barachias, whom you have slain between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation, which not only means the people of his time, but generation means you, his race. The word generation here also means race. All this shall come on you, my race, you the Israelites. And then he wept and cried. He said, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which had become a bloodthirsty city, just like Atlanta, just like Houston, and St. Louis and Chicago and all these other cities, Louisville. He said, oh, thou that killest the prophets, stonest them which are sent to you, how often would I have gathered thy children together? Yes, your children are like wild bulls on every street corner. They're full of fury. They're killing each other, but yet he says, I would have gathered them, even as a hen gathers her chickens under her wings. And you won't have it. You don't want to hear it. You won't receive it. Therefore, your community, your house is less desolate, slums. But I say unto you, you shall not see me henceforth, till you shall say, Baruch haba b'Hashem Yahweh. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of Yah. As we drive through our desolate and deadly neighborhoods now, all that Yeshua had said regarding Israelites has come to pass. Our neighborhoods are mostly communities of death and murder, of innocent blood by crime, by abortion included. Yet Kepha, or Peter, declared in Acts chapter 3, verse 12 through 26, he declared the good news to Israelites, that in spite of our forefathers' blood guilt, which they say, may his blood, their blood guilt over the death of Yeshua, when they said, may his blood be on us and on our children. This is the good news. Kepha says in Acts 3, verse 12 through 26. And when Kepha, or Peter, saw it, he answered and said unto the people, you men of Israel, why marvel you at this? Why you look so earnestly on us, as though we by our own power, holiness, we made this man to walk? The Elohim of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob, the Elohim of our fathers, have glorified his son, Yeshua, whom you delivered up and denied him in the presence of Pilate, when he was determined to let him go. But you denied the Holy One and the just, and desired a murderer to be granted unto you, and killed the Prince of Life, whom Elohim have raised from the dead, whereof we are witnesses. And his name, through faith in his name, have made this man strong, whom you see and know. Yea, the faith which is by him have given him this perfect soundness in the presence of you. And now, brethren, I wot that through ignorance you did this, as did also your rulers. But those things which Elohim have showed by the mouth of all his prophets, that Messiah should suffer, he have so fulfilled. Repent you therefore and be converted, that your sins be blotted out, when the times of refreshing shall come from the presence of Yahweh. And he shall send Yeshua HaMashiach, which before was preached unto you, whom the heavens must receive until the times of restoration of all things, which Elohim have spoken by the mouth of all his holy prophets since the world began. For Moses truly said unto the fathers, a prophet shall Yahweh your Elohim raise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me, him you shall hear in all things, and whatsoever he shall say unto you. And it shall come to pass that every soul which will not hear that prophet, shall he be destroyed from among the people. Yea, and all the prophets from Shemuel, and those that follow after, as many as have spoken, have likewise foretold of these days. You are the children of the prophets, and of the covenant which Elohim made with our fathers, saying unto Abraham, and in thy seed all the kindreds of the earth shall be blessed. Unto you first, Elohim, having raised up his son Yeshua, sent him to bless you in turning away every one of you from his iniquities. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm going to play a song that I like and I know you like. Stand by.
Forgive our forefathers for what they did.
Forgive our forefathers.
Breaking the commandments.
Yeah.
Breaking the law.
Father, I'm sorry for ever leaving your side. Forgive our forefathers for what they did.
Have mercy, Abiyah. Have
Say
mercy.
we broke all of your commandments.
Have mercy.
Played the harlot. We did you so wrong, so wrong. We committed adultery.
Have mercy, yeah.
And for doing this, said we failed as a nation. Said we broke your law while you was long suffering and being patient. Father, I'm sorry. I'm speaking for Israel. Forgive our forefathers for what they did. Father, I'm sorry for Israel. Forgive our forefathers for what they did. Yeah. Say we left our land long time ago. Our forefathers did it.
We left Zion.
We never meant to hurt you, hurt you. We never meant it.
We never meant it.
But Father, I don't blame you for kicking us out of our land
Have mercy, yeah.
and sending us through tribulation. We really deserved it.
Captivity in Babylon.
Father, we apologize. We apologize.
Worshiping other gods.
We just want to come back home, and make it right this time.
Worshiping other religions.
Yeah.
Following other religions.
Yeah.
We're sorry for it.
Bring us back home. Father, bring us back home.
We'll never do it again.
Higher.
We did it to ourselves.
Please hear my prayer.
We sinned against you in so
I'm
many
speaking
ways,
for
Father.
Israel. Right now.
I'm so sorry, Father.
Father, we love you.
Forgive us, Father.
Father, we love you.
I didn't think you'd be gone this long.
We never meant to do you
sent your son and we killed him.
We broke all
Forgive
the
us, Father.
commandments.
Forgive us, Father.
Father, I'm sorry for Israel. I'm sorry for Israel. Father, I'm sorry for Israel.
Oh, my God.
For what they did.
Have mercy, Almighty God.